should never shouldn't. I was gonna, sorry. I was saying it should never have replaced F keys.
No, absolutely. I think it would have been great if it had just been another bar above the function keys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people there would have been. I think initially, my guess is somebody has decided this is where the function keys are going to go, and that's how we'll get buy-in for it. And as it turns out, people are not that way. It's like if you take something away, even if it's function keys that you never use, if you take something away, people are just not going to like that. And so,
well, I mean that's part of the big problem, right? Is that it's not that the function keys are never used; they're just rarely used. But when you want to use them, you don't want to go navigating through a touch interface to find what you're looking for. You want to just hit the key you need.
Yeah, I understand, and I think from what I've seen and heard about electric cars, this is going to be a problem in that area. And I'm not gonna address that now because I don't have an electric car. I don't plan to have an electric car anytime soon. So, but I think that's going to be a thing with them, at least some of the ones that are making a big splash. But they they remove the escape key. It's like which is a key I think is used more often than you would expect. Even for me, it was more often than I would expect. But they gave us a nice big fat escape key on the new keyboard, so I'm okay with that. But I do miss the touch bar. I think it should have been, yeah.
It is kind of funny that the only time I actually miss the touch bar though is when I'm answering your call for us to record.
Well, see, I used it a lot in the beginning, and then I stopped using it because it was hard to find places that used it. So I just okay. Anyway, how was your long weekend?
It was all right. I ended up doing more just in general around the house than I had planned to.
Well, the pictures look good.
Pictures. I posted pictures. Oh, I sent you pictures. That's right. I didn't post.
Pictures
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
I was thinking, wait a minute, what did I post? I don't remember posting anything.
So was that just your car in there, or can you get Emily's car in there too?
Yeah, right now it's just mine. We've got a car seat, a bunch of plastic bins, and a chest freezer that have to go before we can get both vehicles in. But surprisingly, I will be able to fit both vehicles and the riding mower.
Yes, yeah.
It's a tight fit, but it fits. That's what matters.
It's not even it's not even that tight. It's not.
So the two vehicles will be. That's more what I mean by the tight fit. Like the rest of it fits fine, and I could not use all of the storage space along the walls, but then it would just be open space because you're not going to pull in closer than the opening of the garage, right? It's not like you're going to pull in and then veer in toward the wall.
Right.
Yes, it would make it easier to access the vehicles for a passenger on the passenger side or whichever opposite side, is depending on how you want to park. But that's something that we can manage. It's not the end of the world at all. So I was just happy that both will definitively fit once we get the rest of the stuff out of the way.
Good.
I have very much, though, lost track of all of the shit that we've done in this house already.
Yes, yeah.
And this goes kind of back to what you were asking about the weekend. Like I at some point, I think I mentioned we replaced the privacy panels for the fence, right? Just as a general description for anybody that is not familiar with where I am. If you're looking at the house, the backyard was fenced in, and what you could see from the front of the house was privacy fence. But it was old and rotting and falling apart, so replaced it. And this weekend, I stained most of it with the first coat. I ran out of stain with like 3 slats to go, And I decided I wasn't going to go buy more stain. I would just wait until this coming weekend, buy more stain, spray that, because I'm using a sprayer, not a
Yeah.
roller or a brush. Spray what I didn't get coated, and then go back to the other side and start the second coat. And theoretically, it'll be dry enough to kind of add a second coat. But I learned how to use a sprayer. Let me tell you, I did not expect it to be as involved as it was from a technique
It's
perspective.
involved. It is.
I fucked up the first gallon.
So did you overspray or?
Oh no, I just sprayed it like paint. Like I wasn't entirely sure how distance and speed and everything else, and so I just coated way too much stain on the first half of the fence.
Gotcha.
And I decided, all right, I can probably take a pressure washer to it after the second coat and weather it a little bit with that and everything else, and it'll probably be fine. But even then, even with the excess stain, it doesn't look horrible. You just can tell that when I started, I didn't know what I was doing. And then if you go into the backyard and look in the back of the fence, it's like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like.
That's fun. Well, I was gonna say I've got to do that pretty soon. I used a paint sprayer not too long ago, and that was I was like, I think I had an issue with the sprayer itself because I could never dial in and get the correct flow, and it just went through the paint way too fast. I think it was spraying too much paint and I couldn't, like, when I lowered the pressure, then I was like not getting, like, I could never get the pressure low enough where I was getting the right amount of paint. I knew when I was getting too much, and so I dialed it down, but it still was too much paint was coming out of the nozzle. Like, it would drip every time I was done painting or spray. Like, when I would stop spraying, it would drip.
Interesting. So I bought a sprayer specifically for this because we decided the amount of wood on the outside, it doesn't really make sense to hire a painter. I'm just going to deal with the fact that I hate painting, and I'll get up there and paint it. But the part of what prompted me agreeing to say, all right, fine, I'll paint it, is I'm not doing it by hand or, with a brush. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to get a sprayer, and I'm going to make it easier on me to do these types of projects in the future. So I bought one that has a hopper, and then there's a air hose to the nozzle to spray, so that the hopper can stay on the ground once we get to the point of having to do the exterior trim and all. And I think it's 30-foot hose, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Which was nice for the fence because I could set the hopper just in the middle and do the entire width of the fence without having to move it around, because it's not like it's a huge fence anyway. Again, I think the grand total was something like 47 feet of fencing between the two sides. So it's not like it's huge, but it was nice to not have to move around with the sprayer or have to have, the smaller handheld sprayers where you have to keep refilling the container. It actually holds a gallon in the hopper.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, Becca has a stainer, a spray stainer, that we're planning to use. I have no idea about how well it's going to go. The paint sprayer I used was one I rented from Home Depot. So,
I always forget that they rent tools.
I've rented a lot of tools for them in the past year.
I can imagine. I've gone the other extreme. I've just bought the tools that I needed.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I wanted to dig some holes, and we used an auger, and after we were done with that, Becca was like, "Oh, we should buy an auger," and I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "So that we can, dig holes." And I was like, "When?" I was like, "This is only the second time in my life that I've ever used an auger, so I don't think we need to spend the money on the auger." I was like, "We can, like, even over the course of a lifetime, if I'm paying more to rent an auger 5 times in my life, I'm okay with that, because I don't want to have to deal with it." I don't know. She was just really into the auger, and I don't know why.
I don't know that I would ever buy an auger, but I did buy an auger drill bit, which I think is a worthwhile investment.
Is that for a handheld drill?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's a 1-inch hole. It's not huge by any means, but it has helped immensely when I've wanted to put like small little cheap lanterns, sticking out of the ground or things like that.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
I've wanted to get like an bushcraft type auger.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the distinction.
It's for I think it's still considered an auger, but it's it's the same kind of thing. But it's a small auger type drill that you could take out into the woods and drill into wood.
Okay.
I've seen trying to think. I've seen where people I'm trying to think what I've seen for. One of the thing that I'd actually really like to use it for is maybe like I can't remember what Swedish fire log.
Is that the one where you basically have either a split or a hole or something and you burn it from the inside out?
Yes. Yeah, I thought this like an auger like this would be. I've seen many uses of it. Watching some folks that do bushcraft, but I've seen like where people have. I've mostly seen. I guess most of what I was thinking to use it for is for like the Swedish. I can't remember. I sent you a picture of one.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember what else.
Move the correct or use the correct trackpad.
Trying to remember what else I've seen it, but like if you see that tube at the top of it,
yeah,
you would take a stick that you find in the woods, a relatively straight stick that you find in the woods, and you would use that for your handle.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I've seen where if you in the picture that I sent to you, if you look behind him, like I've seen where he's used something like this to put use pegs to build a structure. So you dig you bore a hole and then use another piece of wood and basically make a peg to help create a joint in the wood.
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
So it's pretty cool.
I always think it would be fun to learn more about. I'm sure you've seen some of the Japanese woodworking, the way they make joints and everything for structures and furniture and everything. I've always thought it would be fun to learn more about it, but I'm not going to do anything, even if I learn about it. I mean, I have already a bunch of hobbies that I've learned stuff about that I still don't do.
Yeah, you have to, be realistic about like, okay, how do I actually want to spend my time? Yeah, I'm okay watching it from time to time. I love watching people work with bamboo. I saw some folks make this beautiful bamboo, like this this curvy, wavy fence out of bamboo, and it's like they're taking these straight pieces of bamboo and breaking them down to a point where they can bend them the way they want to bend them, and it's just so beautiful. I'm so impressed by that kind of work. So the picture of the guy that I sent you with the auger, he has a YouTube channel, and like this is his full-time job. Like he goes out into the woods and he builds bushcraft structures. He did some stuff where he was building it like an Anglo-Saxon style home. He did like a Viking style building, and he's like, he says, disclaimer, it's like, I'm not doing this exactly the way that they would have done it, because he's got some tools that they wouldn't have had, or there's some he's not. I think there was one like he's like, I'm not going to be making my own nails. I'm going to be using store-bought nails, that sort of thing, and but it's very entertaining to watch. I have seen him use like he had a 10-minute video on 10 ways to use a Swiss Army knife, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it was just. I now understand a lot of the things that are on the Swiss Army knife that I didn't quite understand before, why that was there and what to use it for, and um, but he's pretty like he's got a pretty impressive channel.
I'll have to look at it. I've found, so, an interesting segue, I have found that I've become more interested in a lot of the disaster prep like guides and things, but not from a place of wanting to be prepared or thinking the world's going to end or anything else. It's more, I'm just kind of curious what would happen in this situation, or what are the intricacies of actually putting together a shelter if I don't have a tent or a tarp or any of the different things that I'm really accustomed to using. One of the things that I saw that made me consider it or think more about it was like filtered rainwater, or was it filtered? It was some method of harnessing filtered water, and I don't remember all the details, but basically it was a contraption that you could build that would generate basically condensation for the sake of it being filtered on the inside of the contraption, and then drain into whatever receptacle you wanted it to drain into. And so the concept was just how you could have drinkable water if you didn't have access to modern filters or filtration.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to get. I mean, it's like, how many days can you go without food? More than you'll be comfortable with, but you can't go that many days without water. I think one of the best movies that I think really shows off like how how prepared you might be is Castaway, because he had nothing. Like he had nothing.
He had a beach ball, or volleyball.
He had a volleyball, but I mean, but it's like he had no knife. Like I remember there was this movie I watched when I was a teenager. It's probably from the 80s. I cannot remember what it was called. I could look it up and because I have looked it up before and found it, but it was about a boy who gets stranded in, and I say a boy, I mean like 12, 13 years old. He gets stranded in the Canadian wilderness, and I want to say it was summertime, maybe autumn. But he had to survive for a number of days, and he had like a pocket knife and this and that, and it's just like fun story. Kid survives, and what was I remember seeing something like it's like postmodern. Is it postmodern or modern man? In modern storytelling, it's man versus nature, and then I guess maybe postmodern, it's man versus himself, and I guess I don't know what was before modern, but so I could just say pre-modern is man versus God. But Chuck Nolan, the character that was stranded on that island in Fiji, had nothing. Like he had the ice skates, he had the VHS cassettes, which was hilarious. The dress that was like almost totally unusable. Turned out that the tooling or chiffon, I don't remember what the fabric is, but it was a net. It was like a fine mesh, so he did use that. But yeah, I like that movie.
And it's one of the things that has also kind of driven an interest in, or I don't know if it's quite the same, but the SAS Survival Handbook. So general survival. So you have the one side of it, the disaster prep and contraptions, things you build, but then you also have the survival skills aspect of it that, to me, is a separate category, even though they're somewhat intertwined. But because of some of the general interest in some of the disaster prep stuff, just because it seemed interesting, it's also driven an uptick in general interest in survival skills, and it's rekindled a lot of information that I have completely forgotten from my time in Scouts, which is just kind of a fun way to loop it all in. Like a lot of stuff that I actually did know, but had completely forgotten until I reread it again or had my memory jogged for something similar. So there's your plug for Join Scouts. Yeah.
Right. I like I like that kind of thing. I'm not a doomsday prepper or anything. I do think that I don't have enough water on hand, and I would like to have like some like a few cases of bottled water just in case. But I think the most that we've ever had to deal with, and that doesn't mean that that's all we'll ever have to deal with. But the most we've had to deal with is like issues with like snow. That doesn't happen that often where we live. But the last big one was about a little less than 10 and a half years ago. I think it was 2014 and 2013 or 2014. And there was the meteorologist in town kind of got things wrong, and people got stuck on the roads for a few days. And it was really bad because it snowed and then it would melt and then it would refreeze, and it was kind of a mess for a few days in town. Where were you for that?
I was off of 280 when I was working for the financial company. And if you're familiar with the area, if you know where Oak Mountain, or not Oak Mountain, that's not what I'm thinking of, Spain Park. So what's that road?
On 280?
Yeah, well, you go off 280, you make a right, you go out towards Spain Park if you're headed away
Inverness?
from town. Yeah, it's past Inverness. It's it's
Doug
before.
Baker.
Anyway, it's somewhere in that area.
Anyway.
There's an office
Okay.
building that's right there around Inverness and 280. It's a little bit past Inverness.
Yeah.
That I was in that office building, and when it started, I was like, all right, I'm going to let everybody get out of the way because there's no reason for me to jump out here and be in the middle of this chaos, because you could tell. And part of what triggered it, just for anybody who wasn't around that happens to listen, is that every school decided to suddenly release at the same time, basically. And so all parents had to now figure out how to leave work at the same time to go pick up children when they were not planning to do so. And so I saw the chaos unfolding for that first 30 minutes or so, and thought, I have no reason to immediately rush away from work. I will let the rush kind of die down, and then I'll be able to make it home. And I don't remember exactly what time I finally decided I would try leaving the office. But what I encountered was that if people hadn't been absolute idiots and just abandoned their vehicle in the middle of the road, I could have made it home without any problems. But instead, there were lines of vehicles just sitting in the lane or not attempting to move out of the way for traffic, like not attempting to pull over. It's like they couldn't go any further, and they just stopped and got out of their vehicle. And so every way I went, yeah. And so every way I went, I encountered that. And it's where, all right, if I had chains or something else where I knew I wouldn't slide an inch or two, I can make it through this gap. But as it stands, I didn't have chains, and this was ice. There's no way you're not going to slide some. And so I finally turned around and went back to the office and spent the night there, and then the next morning drove home without an issue.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible. It was not as bad as a lot of people reported. I was not stuck in traffic for 14 hours like some people.
Yeah. So did you you stay? Were you the only one at the office that had to spend the night there?
No, we had quite a few, and the office had a gym facility, so there were showers as well.
Oh, nice.
And we were walking distance to that Walmart that's on 280 if you head out that direction. So
Yes,
a few
I
of
know
us
where that
actually
is.
walked down and grabbed some basic necessities like towels.
Yeah, I know exactly what office building you were in. that that got it for me. Um, I was wrong. It was it's been 10 and a half years because I think it was in 2013, not 2014. Um, what made me remember is I was ironically off that day. I didn't have to work, and the reason that was ironic is because I lived walking. Like I did walk to work. Like I regularly rode my bicycle to work and occasionally walked to work. And if the weather was really bad, I would drive to work. So, or be driven to work. So it was ironic that I was off that day. I did go and had and had room for a few people to come over to my apartment at the time, and that was good. Um, but yeah, I didn't get stuck. I do remember going out for groceries a day or two later, and I'm in a two-wheel drive Nissan Altima, and I know how to drive in the snow, and I know how to drive on ice, which is very slowly, and don't stop, don't start. You basically go 1 or 2 miles an hour, and you don't stop. You can't really because you don't stop because
Right.
if you do apply the brakes, you don't stop. And like I got to Publix pretty quickly, and um, I remember seeing a woman walking on the side of the road, and I offered her a ride. She's like, "No, I'm enjoying the weather. I'm enjoying the sunshine." And I was like, "Okay." And I get to Publix, and they're like, "Yeah, we're closing in 30 minutes." It was like 1:30 in the afternoon, so they're going to be closed at 2. And I was like, "Oh, she's not going to make it." I feel bad for her. So, but I was driving home, and I was like going 2 miles an hour, going up a hill that's completely iced over, and this idiot stopped at the top of the hill. I'm like, you, because then it meant I had to stop, and when I stopped, I started sliding backwards. But thankfully, I slid into a patch of asphalt, wet asphalt, that because it had melted some, and I was able to get my momentum. And I waited, so I actually waited for that person at the top of the hill to slide off the side of the road because they were an idiot, and then I went up the hill and went past them and went home, and it was totally fine. Had all my groceries.
Yeah, it was interesting how quick certain areas, the roads were normal or just kind of wet at that point. Because when I left the office to drive home, there were a lot of vehicles on 280 just parked in the middle of the road still.
Yeah,
But like you could easily drive around them. 280 itself is heavily trafficked enough that even with all of the idiots trying to drive, the ice just didn't have a chance. It got melted over
yeah.
time. And then 459 was pretty much clear.
I was going to ask you if you had to drive all the way up to 459.
I did.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I didn't know if there was like a different, better way, but no.
I mean, I could have gone Valley Dell over to 65 and up,
That would have
but I
been.
still would have hit
That would have been.
459.
Yeah, I was going to say that would have been worse. It just seems like that would have been a bad idea.
I even tried that route when I encountered all the idiots blocking my path, and yeah, it was not any better, or at least not the day of. It was not any better.
Ever since then, just as a matter of precaution, I would anytime there's snow in the forecast, I'll load up my backpack, my hiking backpack with like my like plenty of blankets and a hammock and so forth, and a tarp, and in case did get stuck on the side of the road, I could at least be comfortable and not have to like run my car, so to stay warm. So I think that's the most prepping I do at this point.
Right after that, I put together 2 bags that had like space blankets and things, but what I would call emergency packs. And eventually, what the stuff that was in them just got way too old, and then got stored in non-climate controlled environment, and finally got tossed with the move. Actually, but we do have, so in both vehicles there are 2 of the is it Mylar in it, the space blankets?
Yeah, Mylar.
So both vehicles have 2 of those. I think I have glow sticks in both vehicles for visibility. I need to go back and add a hammock in each vehicle or something else, just some type of seating or reclining element. And I have enough hammocks. There's no reason that I can't just put one in each vehicle. Um,
Yeah, totally.
and then we've got two. I don't remember the company off the top of my head. We've got two jackets that I ended up picking up that were kind of specifically for this purpose. Because when not in use as a jacket, there's a pouch built into the jacket that it kind of folds up into and becomes a pillow. So it could be a jacket or a pillow. And I thought that made a lot of sense for this type of scenario where you could have it be a pillow if you're using the blankets. And as long as that was warm enough, great. And if not, if you needed it to be a jacket, you had a jacket.
Yeah, one of the things I thought about is like, if you were in a situation like that where like that I don't like the name that they called it, but when it snowed so bad and people got stuck, it's like, I thought about, I was like, if I were to like get out of my vehicle and go up this hill, set up my hammock, I was like, and all these other people are like stuck in their cars. It's like, how safe am I? Is somebody going to think, oh, he looks warm, and go, let's say, because like, you get to a place where like let's say you run out of fuel and you can't keep yourself warm. I did have some concerns about that, and gonna rather have it and not use it than want it and not have it. But I always thought that if like something like that happened, I would probably turn my car off, keep it locked, and stay in the vehicle and use my blankets in the vehicle.
Yeah, I don't know which way I would go, to be honest. Like part of me also, though, we have two very different mindsets when it comes to responding to threats, I think. Just because of background in general, and certainly no secret at this point if you listen to the show, I engage in a combative art pretty regularly.
I was just going to say, how to...
Yeah. But even then, like my default reaction in general is to attempt to avoid altercation. I don't want to fight. Anybody that knows how to fight doesn't want to fight unless they're a professional fighter. It's just kind of, it's one of those things where the different potential outcomes. And even if you are really good at what you do, all it takes is one wrong glance or move or something, and you could be the one that's on the worst end of an altercation.
Yeah.
And so part of me says that I would like pull the vehicle up to a tree and use the brush guard as an anchor point, and a tree as an anchor point, and kind of be there with the vehicle where I could barricade myself if need be. But at the same time, a vehicle is at least relatively sturdy shelter against the elements. And if I have a blanket and everything, why not just put the seat down and lay in the back like it's a bed,
Yeah, that was my my go-to. And I think that the way my seats are, that they can be positioned in a way, take the headrest off, the front seats can be laid flush with the back seats. So you can have like, a little extra room. So I'm pretty much, I could probably stay in my car. If I knew that I could get to somewhere secluded, I might get out and take advantage of the hammock, because I will say my hammock is really comfy and really cozy when set up properly. So, yeah. But it's just like, you just think of like the worst, thinking about the worst in humanity and how people may or may not behave. I'd want to avoid an altercation, and even if some sort of combative art, it's like somebody's standing there with a gun and they just shoot you, then you're shot, and that you can't really do anything about that.
Yeah, I mean
some people are that.
Yeah. There was actually a conversation at the gym most recent class where one of the guys was relaying a story. I don't remember where it happened, but basically there was a valet that was getting a vehicle, for its owner, and some guy just walked up and shot the valet and took the car. like you never know when somebody's going to surprise you and have, really the ultimate advantage in that particular scenario. And the general conversation was talking about how, yeah, we enjoyed this because of a number of the things that it talks about and teaches, and things like, attempting to avoid the altercation. You never know what your opponent knows or has. You never want to take for granted any type of superiority or anything in a conflict. But just how vulnerable we are, even if we are one of the most skilled practitioners of the art, you're still not going to beat a gun. Just
Right.
plain and simple. And you're probably not going to beat a knife. I remember there being an old adage or saying that talked about the only way to win a knife fight is to be stabbed. And it's just because you have to be able to control the knife to be able to take it out of the equation. And how are you going to control the knife? You control where you get stabbed instead of letting your opponent pick for you.
That's pretty bleak.
It is, but it
really,
attempts to prepare you for the mindset of what it means to engage with somebody with a weapon if you don't have a weapon.
No, I understand.
Weapon versus no weapon. Weapon has the upper hand. It is interesting, though. All of this bleeds into a question I was going to pose, and I don't know that I want to go into a full topic about it. But I've been thinking a lot lately about confidence versus arrogance versus cockiness versus just a lack of accepting reality, and how all of those things can kind of blend together. And I think at this point, I don't want to necessarily make that a topic for this show. I think instead I just want to kind of float the idea out there as something that could be of interest, and maybe we revisit it in the future.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
And it is it's somewhat funny. Part of why this has been kind of on my mind in general is I think of myself as a relatively confident individual, but I guarantee you, in my interactions, someone else perceives me as arrogant instead of confident. And it wouldn't surprise me if someone else saw me as out of touch with the facts of a situation as opposed to just confidence in my ability. Predominantly because, that person may not know either my assessment of the situation or my abilities, whatever. But it's just this general way that we have all of these different terms that surround perceived ability or competency, and how different it can be depending on your perspective. And that just kind of created a very interesting thing for me to think through. And I was thinking through it within the context of, in order to succeed in something like a combative art or climbing or determination with health goals, like, take your pick, it doesn't matter specifically what it is, but you have to create a confident mindset that you're going to succeed. But at what point does it start out just being arrogance or a lack of touch with reality? And at what point does it actually transition into confidence? Or does it start out as confidence? And that's kind of the question I want to leave hanging and pending, and we'll come back to it at some point in the future, unless you have some immediate thoughts.
Well, I was just going to say, I know that there are some people who are exhibit idiocy without the confidence or the arrogance.
Yeah, that's fair. I was trying to think, when I made the note, I was just trying to think of a word that would kind of encapsulate a lack of anything else that I would ascribe to it other than confidence or arrogance.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after-show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.